Greetings builders, and welcome to the part 4 of our top 12 builds for the Tribe of the Ancestors League. If you missed the previous parts, don't worry, you can find their links together with the POBs and complete guides for all those builds in the video description. Let's start this video with a build that uses a super strong archer skill and got a 3rd place on our list, the Tornado Shot Deadeye with the Ranger class. Tornado Shot is so strong that it doesn't even need a returning projectile support gem. This way you can keep your Mirrored Archer for a smoother clear speed. Just as I did with the Lightning Arrow build, the complete guide of this one will also count with 2 versions of the build, a budget and a complete one. Each has its own PoE and passive tree, so you can start this build even on a low budget and upgrade it later. To list the pros of this build, I have to start talking about the clear speed and the boss damage. With Tornado Shot, you're going to clear maps in less than a minute and kill bosses in less than a second. This build is also not complicated to put together, I totally recommend it for everyone. Now to list the cons, I would say that this build is not very tanky. Even though you have some defensive layers, it's important to take advantage of your ranged attacks and stay far from danger. If you don't mind your position, you might die. About the budget, you can get it destroying early endgame maps with only around 80 chaos. To comfortable advance to yellow maps, I recommend investing around 150 chaos, and for easily completing your Atlas, I recommend investing around 4 divines. But if you go for the complete version, you need to invest at least 4 more divines. Don't forget that on PoEbuilds.net you can find a list with all the equipment that you need to buy for this build, with direct links for examples being sold by other players. On the budget version, you only need one mandatory unique item for this build, the Yoke of Suffering amulet that causes all of your elemental damage to shock. This way our enemies take a lot more damage. On the complete version, on the other hand, besides the Yoke of Suffering, you also need the Lionized Fall and the Thread of Hope unique jewels. They are expensive but grant a huge boost to your damage. For clear speed, I'll give this build 10 out of 10. You fire many projectiles with high attack speed, and those projectiles explode in more projectiles, chain on enemies, bounce off walls, and go everywhere. You're going to kill enemies that you never even had a chance to see. The boss damage is also amazing and deserves 10 out of 10. Tornado Shot is super strong, and with the help of your ballistas you're going to kill bosses so fast that you won't even notice them. For the survivability, I'll give this build 8 out of 10. Even though you have armor, evasion, spell suppression, and you can kill enemies from a good distance, this build isn't very tanky. If you don't mind your position, you might die. Next, on 2nd place, we have this classic build that just got a lot better with the recent changes, the Mage Skeleton's Guardian with the Templar class. On this build, we use the unique Geo Dead Reckoning to transform our regular skeletons into mage ones. They fire elemental projectiles at a huge range and deal tons of damage. To list the pros of this build, I would start with survivability. With the Guardian Ascendancy, you get almost 75% chance to block attacks and spells, a huge life regeneration, and the new Sentinel of Radiance that takes 20% of the damage for you. All of that combined with the fact that this is a minion build that is very safe to play, because you stay behind your minions and they can kill enemies from a big distance. Also, with the new Elemental Relic, you and your minions get 3 damage auras totally for free, resulting in a great boss damage. Now to list the cons, I will start saying that Mage Skeletons don't move, they feel more like a totem build. For that reason, you need to keep resummoning them while clearing maps. The Guardian Ascendance also doesn't get a speed boost from Flash Offering like the Necromancer, so it's a little bit slower. Above all, when comparing to the Necromancer, this version also doesn't get that awesome 30% to all elemental resistance for you and your minions. This might cause your zombies and specters to die from elemental damage if you don't look for minion resistance on your rare gear. As for budget, this build is not expensive at all. You can get it destroying early endgame maps with only around 80 chaos. To comfortably advance to yellow maps, I recommend investing around 150 chaos, and for easily completing your Atlas, I recommend investing around 4 divines, but you can totally do it with less. You only need one mandatory unique item for this build, a Dead Reckoning Jewel that turns your regular skeletons into mage ones. For clear speed, I'll give it 8 out of 10. You have many skeletons firing many projectiles at a high cast speed rate. I took 2 points out because the mage skeletons don't move and you need to keep resummoning them, and also because the Guardian does not get the Flash Offering speed boost like the Necromancer. The boss damage is also amazing and deserves 9 out of 10. With the new returning projectile support gem, 100% of projectiles will hit enemies twice, but since it's not as powerful as the nerfed anomalous faster projectiles, I took 1 point out. For the survivability, I'll give it 10 out of 10. This build has a big load of defensive layers such as high armor, 75% chance to block attacks and spells, a minion that takes 20% of the damage for you, and since it's a minion build, you are far from danger all the time. Finally, in first place, as the build that I had the most fun during the Trial of the Ancestors League, we have the amazing Lightning Strike Trickster with the Shadow class. Lightning Strike is an awesome skill that used to be on top of the meta, but went down after a couple of nerfs. Now with the new returning projectile support champ, it's back with more power than ever. To list the pros of this build, I would start with its clear speed. Besides a strong melee hit, Lightning Strike also creates many lightning projectiles that run on the floor, killing every enemy on its path. Besides that, this build also counts with the Trickster Ascendance to be super fast and tanky. It has 7 frames charges for extra damage and speed and a lot of defensive layers. Now to list the cons, the first thing that comes to mind is that this build needs a good elemental call to work properly, but don't worry, it's easy to buy one from other players. As for budget, this build is not expensive at all. You can get it destroying early in game maps with only around 80 chaos. To comfort with advanced yellow maps, you need to invest around 150 chaos, and for easily completing your atlas, I recommend investing around 4 divines. You only need one mandatory unique item for this build, the Yoke of Suffering Amulet that causes all of our elemental damage to be able to shock, causing enemies to take a lot more damage. For clear speed, I'll give this one 10 out of 10. As mentioned before, you have 7 frames charges and a huge effect of elusive that grants this build a lot of movement speed. Besides that, Lightning Strike creates many projectiles that run on the floor, exploding many enemies that aren't even close to you yet. The boss damage is also amazing and deserves 9 out of 10. With the new returning projectile support gem, you deal a lot more damage to bosses. This one is an awesome boss killer. For the survivability, I'll give it 9 out of 10. This build has over 100,000 effective HP because of high armor, evasion, spell suppression, fortify, and even a trickster buff that causes you to take 40% less damage. Above all, you are immune to freeze and stuns. And that's it for today, guys. Have you played any of those builds during this league? Please don't forget to share your experience in the comments and leave a thumbs up to support the channel. I wish you guys an amazing day, and don't forget to keep building!